Big plans and promises. The scenario that Arya had chosen for their shared dreams was their garden. It was night in the dream as well, and the fireflies gave it a special glow to the place. Eragon walked through the trees on the pathway behind Arya as she guided them to a bed of soft grass where the trees were sparser, and they could lie down and watch the stars. There, they spent the entire night studying the sky. Arya would point at a star and Eragon would name it, according to the convention they had set in Mount Anga regarding the eastern sky. In the physical realm, her naked body rested on top of his completely relaxed, as his hand traced the curve of her waist, her spine and shoulder. Her warmth and her soft moans to his caresses would make him feel entranced. Her fingers also explored his body, with touches that went from his side to his chest. At times, her nails scratched very lightly his chest hair or beard. At one point, he felt that she was shivering slightly because of the cool breeze that entered through the open balcony door. With his other hand, he reached the blanket that was cast aside on the bed and put it over them both. A feeling of gratitude filled his mind. Before dawn, as it was expected, the male cat rose from the corner of the bed and walked on top of their intertwined bodies. It startled her, and Arya cut their connection, turning to look at the creature that approached Eragon's chest with cautious steps. He laughed and opened his eyes to see the cat lightly stomping on him over the blanket and purring. That's him saying it's morning already and he wants to get out. Eragon said. Arya rolled over and lay down on her back carrying the blanket with her. It's not morning, it's still dark outside, she complained. Don't I know? He turned to her and kissed her forehead. He didn't even bother getting dressed because he had intentions to be back in an instant. As he walked down the stairs, the female followed until he opened the door and the pair ran outside heading to the garden. Some small rodent was about to die soon to serve as breakfast. When he got back to bed, Arya lifted the blanket so he could get under it with her. He snuggled himself inside her embrace to feel her warmth again and let himself be carried back to rest. What are their names? He came to consciousness to the sound of her voice. Whose? The cat's. Oh. The female is Cherry and the male is Pie. Cherry Pie, she said with humor, made one for another. He joked and buried his face in her neck. She laughed as her fingernails scratched his scalp softly. Are the other cats living in the garden their descendants? Eragon nodded. Interesting. You know what's interesting? He raised his head to look at her. I haven't seen Blagden yet. Where is he? Arya started to laugh and Eragon didn't know why. He's home. He refused to come. The last time he was left behind and had to find the way back on his own, she explained with mirth. You should have seen the way he looked like when he arrived. Eragon smiled and laid his head back down in the curve of her neck. Didn't you feel bad for leaving him behind? Of course, but I couldn't find him anywhere. So I figured he would follow us. I just didn't think it would take him an entire day to realize we were gone. Eragon chuckled. Weird creature. Indeed. Any new riddles sang by him lately? His muffled question made her take a long pause to answer. Eragon thought she hadn't heard him. Yes. Eragon raised his head again and frowned, and Arya cupped his cheeks in her hands, and they are half unsolved, half unpleasant. How about we rest this subject for now? His frown deepened. She was hiding something, he could tell. Arya, Eragon. She reached his lips with hers and kissed him with delicacy, then whispered, Trust me. How couldn't he do her wishes when her soft lips tasted his so slowly? Or when her legs were encircling his waist? Or when her hands made him move closer to her? It was impossible not to oblige and let himself be lured into her game. Eragon rode the white stallion to the village by the Edda. He had planned to meet with Helena before the residents and guests left for the games. It was very early, and the sun had only cast its first light on the land. The fire in people's stoves was still to be lit. He knocked on the inn's back door no more than twice before it opened, and Helena's hand shot to his vest to pull him inside. She shut the door the minute he walked in. So, did you find out anything? She shushed him and led him upstairs. They walked inside her room, and he settled himself on a simple chair placed in front of a small and old desk. He just left and might be still roaming the streets. You know how the elves have good hearing. It's better to be safe than sorry. Right. Sorry. He waited for her to lock the door and light up the candles. Now tell me, what did he say? Helena served them mead from the bottle she had on her bedside table. Eragon thought of refusing due to the early time of day, but simply placed his cup on the desk. At least it's not our production of ale you're wasting. Saphira commented with sarcasm. Good morning, Saphira. I'm glad you're alert for this. I may need your help. He greeted her as she still lay lazily in the shelter. Of course, little one. I'm here. He's hard to squeeze, that elf, Helena said, and sipped her mead as she sat on the bed. But I managed to catch a thing or two. Eragon motioned for her to continue. Well, according to our plan, he met me in the tavern after I invited him to celebrate his victory. I'm sorry for that, but I had to give him more free drinks than it's advised. Eragon dismissed her concerns about their profits and encouraged her to keep going. When he had won too many, but not enough for complete loss of memory, I started to compliment his armor. Did you ask if he was cheating? And what does it have to do with the threats? Eragon shrugged. He had thought Deucen had accessed the energy in his armor's gems during the fight against Rainier. But the elves that inspected the fighters and removed all spells and wards would have caught that kind of strategy. All stores of energy were blocked magically before the competition. He couldn't have cheated. At least not that way, you are right. It has nothing to do with the matter in hand. Continue, as I was saying. I told him how beautiful it was and how expensive it might have been. She took another sip and smiled with a mean expression. I don't like to brag, but my talents might have helped. She raised her right palm and wiggled her fingers. Eragon rolled his eyes. He wasn't interested in her professional techniques. Can you get to the point already? Helena laughed. Always the honorable man, aren't you, Shadeslayer? All right. He just brushed my comments off and said he didn't have to worry about gold, that his sauce was far from drying out. So I mentioned how good must it be to be a noble elf, or a prince like him. He laughed and said he was no noble. Eragon's head raced with all the possibilities. He must be stealing, or someone is providing for him, he said. Will you let me finish? Eragon signaled for her to go on. I pretended to be stupid, like I always do with men like him, and said that the costumes of the elves were a mystery to me, that the idea of an elf working to live sounded odd. Once more he laughed and said the one thing the elves did well as a proper paying work was trading. He's trading information. Eragon concluded, to what Helena grimaced. Sorry. Continue. At that point, he was already getting bold with his touching. I suggested that we move the conversation to my room, so we wouldn't raise too much attention. When we got here, I tried to speculate what kind of trading he was doing. That was when he stopped talking altogether. Eragon gritted his teeth. He imagined he would have more than that by then. Calm down, Helena said with a hand up to him. I didn't say the story was over. She got up from the bed and lifted the mattress. From under it, she retrieved a piece of parchment and handed it to him. It was a letter in the ancient language with a slanted and sophisticated handwriting. I only know a handful of words in the ancient language to work on my spells, but it seemed to me as a job order. What do you say? Helena stood behind him as he read the letter. She was right. It was a job order. It was full of riddles, and the names mentioned were hidden behind aliases. Even then, Eragon could understand its content with clarity. It demanded Deucen to gather information about Eragon and the Academy, especially his relationship with Queen Aria and the influence of the Order in the political affairs of Alagaesia. What else would it be? How did you get this? He looked up to Helena. It fell from his pouch when he reached his coins to pay me. He was so drunk, that it didn't occur to him that he had lost the letter. I've been serving him mead like it was fresh water. He could barely stand straight. It also seems stupid that he would carry it around. He should have burned it. Eragon shook his head while examining the parchment. No, he couldn't. It says, here, he must present the letter to someone back in Elismera to prove his identity. It just doesn't say who. Oh. So he'll come back to look for it. What should I do? Helena sat back on the bed. I have an idea. Saphira said to Eragon, wait. I may have something. He said to Helena and turned his back to her to place the letter on the desk as Saphira spoke. You should tell her to go looking for him before he could come back. Tell her to give the letter back to him and say she couldn't understand a word that's written there. I doubt he knows she's a magician with basic knowledge of the ancient language. That way she will gain his trust, and he won't get suspicious if you place a tracking spell on the parchment. Eragon widened his eyes. A tracking spell. That was brilliant. When I know the location of the meeting, you can have someone there to find out who is the person who's trading information with Deucen. Their joined conclusion was perfect. He knew exactly what he had to do. So did Saphira, that didn't wait for his request to throw her mind toward the mountain looking for Elva. Arya took a deep breath before knocking on Avelina's door. It didn't take long for the young rider to answer it and let Arya in. Avelina occupied one of the apartments destined for the riders up in the mountain. Each apartment was below a niche with an opening to the outside. The two quarters were connected by a spiral staircase. Ranala didn't seem to be in her niche by the time Arya arrived. I came to apologize. Arya said as soon as Avelina closed the door behind her. I know, she said after a sigh. I should have thought about the implications of my request to you and Rainier. I was only thinking about myself. I am so sorry, Avelina. The woman was serious and had an impetuous look. Arya thought she saw a hint of what she was looking to develop in Avelina all that time. She had a drop of fierceness in her expression that made Arya consider that maybe what caused the scale to tip was Rainier. It made sense, for the stories she had heard of their discussions. It was clear that you were only thinking about yourself. Do you think you are the only one who fears the future? Arya swallowed a bit of her pride. It was not the time to retort. It was time to listen and to make amends. She shook her head, so Avelina continued. You are right. You're not the only one. So far, Master Eragon had been kind to us by letting us be together in the north, but how long until our duties break us apart? How long until I tell Rainier goodbye without knowing when will I see him again? Imagine that it happens at the same time I'm working behind his back to take his place. Arya clenched her jaw. Avelina had understood it all wrong. You wouldn't take his place. You would take Eragon's place. That is meant for Rainier. That's the plan, isn't it? So instead of helping him get ready, you are working against him. Closing her eyes, Arya tried to get her calm back. She had come to apologize, but Avelina was making it too difficult. She breathed deeply twice before replying. Even if she thought that Avelina was being unreasonable, she wanted to be well with her friend. You are right, she said, swallowing the rest of her pride. I made a mistake and will no longer speak of it again. I'm truly sorry, Avelina. Avelina hesitated, and Arya wasn't sure if her humility would be enough. I accept your apologies. Only if you do not ask that of me again. Avelina relented and had a softer tone this time. Arya went close to Avelina and put her hands on the other's shoulders. I promise I will never speak of this again. Avelina finally gave her a shy smile and a hug. It pleased Arya that Avelina had always been such a sparkling creature with a pure soul. That's why Arya did not let her pride speak louder, for she knew that Avelina was incapable of cheating and lying, and she was. Charisma defined her, a quality that Arya cherished very much. I'm glad we solved this. Our discussion gave me a big heartache. Arya said with a sad smile after they separated. Avelina gave her a sympathetic look. It was not only because we had a discussion, was it? Perception also defined her. Arya turned to go sit on an arm's chair, followed by Avelina, who took the seat in front of her. I do fear the future, as you said. She looked away, debating with herself how much she wished to be honest with Avelina, but most of all with herself. I know it's too far ahead in the future, but I can't stop thinking about losing him. Avelina leaned forward in her chair and seemed surprised. Why would you lose him? For the same reason you fear losing Rainier. Too much distance and too many misunderstandings. We are well known for disagreeing too often. Avelina shook her head. Arya, you have to stop this. You only have a month to be here with him, so don't ruin it thinking about the ways you two can lose each other. Besides, I could bet all the gold in the world that Eragon is thinking about what he had gained instead of all he can lose. Arya smiled. He thinks he's so lucky to be with me. He has no idea that I'm the fortunate one. You both are. Arya spared her a thankful nod. Anyway, I still have to approach him about his promise and see what his idea of commitment is. Well, I'm sure he wants you to agree on a backup plan to the possibility of Rainier failing in taking the lead. I just hope he doesn't want me to get involved like you did. Arya mimicked Avelina's stance and placed her elbows on her knees. Fernan thinks he wants me to leave my crown and come here instead. And that's my fear as well. Arya said it with a somber tone. Then get ready for the possibility of having to commit to it or to tell him it's impossible. Arya pursed her lips. How could she refuse his wish when he was willing to sacrifice his duty for their well-being? But on the other hand, she couldn't just abdicate her throne for personal reasons. What about all the people that depended on her? Would she leave them to the wolves? The ones who wished to start a war against other races for dominance and power, she couldn't. He will want me to come, she stated. I know it. Will you? You just advised me to think of the present, and I have to agree. Look what planning too far ahead caused to me and you. Avelina smiled with sympathy, but Arya knew she had a complete perception of which conclusion Arya had just achieved. You won't come, will you? You won't leave your crown. Arya felt emotion building up inside her chest. If it was hard to admit it to her friend, she feared the time she would have to say it to him. She would break his heart. With teary eyes, Arya shook her head. Again, Avelina threw her a sympathetic look. You promised not to insist on your plan of preparing me to lead, she started. So, it's only fair that I promise you something in return. Arya frowned and wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What is it? I promise I will do my best to get Rainier ready for leading. I owe you this, she said with her hands on her chest. You don't owe me anything, Avelina. I owe you everything, Arya. You taught me a lot. You made me exceptional. You and Eragon. I owe this to the both of you. Arya nodded and felt grateful for such a strong friendship. Rainier will be ready to lead, even if I have to feed him all the knowledge with a giant spoon, she said, gesturing the act. Arya laughed faintly. Thank you, Avelina. I trust you. They stared at each other for a while as Arya composed herself. Avelina started to play with the tips of her long hair that was firmly tied behind her head. She was ready for battle, as Arya noticed. Have you heard of Deathada already? Avelina asked in a casual voice as she curled the ponytail around her finger. No. I'm supposed to contact him tomorrow morning. It's a good thing you're not there. Arya wasn't so sure. When the time came for her to leave to the east, her opposition worked to rush the debate about the opening of the forest for scrying mirrors and its regulation. They took years to touch the subject, but at the worst moment possible, it suddenly became a matter of life and death. It was crucial that she would be there to pressure the council to approve the measure, because the other part would work against it. The problem was that not even her advisors and supporters were so sure about the relaxation of such law. Avelina celebrated Arya's absence, considering that it was good for her to not see herself almost alone in defending the opening and facing the defeat by herself. I don't know. I may be accused of cowardice if we lose. And if we win, I won't take the credit for it. Avelina brushed it off with a hand motion. Let them talk. You're not obligated to stand tall when your opposition parade their hate. In fact, I am. The opposition is part of the people, which I must rule. I fear what kind of reaction I will face upon my return. Nothing you haven't faced before. Still, it could be easier. They set the worst timing possible just to put me in a difficult position. Avelina frowned. Arya, she called in a warning. Arya breathed deeply and smiled. Live in the present, right? Right. Avelina smiled and clapped her hands once. That's the only way. Arya laughed, admiring again her capability of lightening up a bad mood. We should move then. Arya stood up. The games are about to start, and you don't want to be late for your fight. Elva left the inn, and Eragon followed shortly after. Remember, he turned at the door to instruct Helena. You need to pretend to be completely oblivious to magic and the ancient language. I know. Now go. She rushed him out. He stepped out onto the street to feel the morning sun warming his face and the back of his neck. It wasn't severe, though, and he welcomed the feeling after being trapped for more than an hour in Helena's dark room. He intended to go to the docks in hopes to find Oswald, since word said that he was an early riser and would probably be working on his boat by then. Word told no lies. Hello, my friend. Eragon greeted the large man with only one arm. Oh, hello there. What brings you here so early, Shadeslayer? Oswald was wearing a tattered shirt stained of the wax he used to polish the hull of his boat. Eragon approached the man. I came to ask a favor of you, he said in a low voice. It's all I'm doing today, asking for favors, as a good beggar you are. Saphira teased him and laughed. Anything, my friend, ask away. Eragon looked around but didn't see anyone near. It's about those rumors of 2 years ago regarding the Elven Queen. Oswald's face became serious and he puffed his chest, assuming a posture of importance. What about it? What do you need, sir? I'm here to help. Eragon smiled. I need you to deliver a letter. In hands, just a letter, Oswald frowned. That I do every time. I've carried many letters of yours to all corners of Alagaresia, haven't I? This time is not that simple. It's a letter to a lord from Elismera. You must give it to him personally, so it will require that you wait in the last elven trading post until he decides if he will meet you, and then wait until he comes to you. It will be boring and annoying to deal with the elves. They ask a lot of questions, to which you will answer only the basics. What if they take the letter from me? They can try but won't succeed. I'll make sure of it. Eragon raised his right palm, and the Jedway Ignacia shined its silver magic. Oswald gulped and wiped his hand on the dirty shirt to extend it to Eragon. He grabbed the man's forearm firmly. I will do it, Shadeslayer. You can count on me. Great. But I will pay you, Oswald. A good amount of gold, you hear me? Oh no, you don't have to. I'm a celebrated merchant back home, just because I can call you my friend, you know. People trust me and I can charge the price I want for the deliveries, that I know they'll pay, you know. You don't have to pay me, no, sir. I insist. Eragon let go of the man's hand and kept talking so he wouldn't protest any longer. When the time comes, I'll come find you so we can work on the details. Deal. He showed his gaping smile. Eragon thanked the man and headed back to the inn where he had instructed the stallion to wait for him. I hope this works. And that Arya won't be mad when she finds out that you are involving her most trusted advisor. Saphira said, if she trusts him, that's her prerogative. Mine is to doubt whoever may be in the position to threaten her, and he is the first one being the closest to her. If Deathadder is involved in the plot against Arya's life, we will know. He said that with confidence, but deep inside he also feared Arya's reaction. What if he is? he can expect a visit of 1 or 2 riders to take him to justice. What if he isn't? He shrugged and mounted on the horse. We'll keep looking. I wish I could bring the traitor to justice, whoever that is. The image she imprinted in his head gave him chills. He wished to cause that person as much pain as possible, but maybe it didn't include their skin to be licked off slowly from head to toes by Saphira's rough tongue. He shook his head to wipe out the discomfort and started to ride to the arena. He had a full day ahead, choosing with care what he would write in the letter. Arya stirred in her seat when she saw that Eragon had been so immersed in his thoughts that he was frozen in his chair during the entire lunchtime. Nasuada tried to pull him into the conversation about 3 times before giving up completely due to his short answers. Arya wondered if his silence had anything to do with the talk he went to have with the red-haired woman. She nudged his mind with hers. Eragon glanced at her sitting in front of him and raised his brow in a silent question. "Are you all right?" she asked. He nodded slightly and allowed her into his memories of his morning. Arya spectated the whole conversation between him and Helena, then the agreement he reached with Elva. The strange woman was sent to watch Deucen's every step during his stay in Anga and warn him if he was getting any closer to finding out anything relevant about Arya, the Order, and Eragon. Arya watched as he elaborated and placed a tracking spell on the letter that Helena was to return to Deucen. When Eragon had the location of the meeting between the elf and his mysterious business partner, Elva would have to go find that person and retrieve all the information that was possible. A lot could go wrong. It was a dangerous move. She saw Eragon's fear of leaving Arya unattended in Elva's absence, but was pleased with his trust in her capability of defending herself if something happened. Arya was even more uncomfortable. She didn't know who her offenders were, but she was certain they acted on behalf of 2 or 3 powerful houses. If Elva stepped on their toes with her findings, she feared it would only speed up the process of her downfall. She expressed it to Eragon, and he answered with a concerned look. Inside their connection, however, he sounded sure of the success of the mission. "What do you 2 think of that?" She conferred with Fernan and Saphira, who were silent spectators until that point. "I think it will work," Saphira said. "Of course you do, it was your idea." Fernan mocked. "Mine or not, a great idea nevertheless." Fernan laughed at her pride. Meanwhile, Eragon inspected Arya's reaction with concern. He wanted her approval, it was clear to her. "How about you, Fernan, my dear? You know that if it depended on me, we would already have solved this." "By licking each of your opposition's scalps off." Her mouth curved upward, almost unnoticeable at the simplicity and violence of his solution, but also because Eragon grimaced with the horrendous image at the lunch table. "But since it's not up to me, I believe that Eragon and Saphira's plan is the best course of action," Fernan stated. They all silenced to hear what Arya would have to say about it. Nasuada tried to call Eragon's attention one more time, to which he simply told her he was having a bad headache and was in need to be silent. She respected his condition and started a conversation with Oric instead, who was sitting by Arya's side. "So, what do you say?" he asked. Arya took a deep breath as she bit a piece of a stuffed tomato. "It's done already." "I don't think I can say much now." She watched as his eyes fell to his plate in a repented move. He knew he had let her out of his plan in an impulse again. At least this time she knew beforehand that he was planning something. However, she continued, "I couldn't have made a better plan myself. It's risky, but I trust this will work." He looked at her and gave her a discreet smile. "I just don't think it was wise of you to bring Elva into this." Her tone was severe in the last part. "She is already involved in being your shield. Besides, she's eager to prove to Saphira and me that she is worthy of becoming a rider, with hopes that we can influence the dragon's choice. It's not how it works." Fernan said. "It's not, but she doesn't need to know that." Saphira responded with malice. Very cunning of them, Arya thought. They were learning the ways of politics after all. It's settled then, Arya said and continued to eat. "There's more." Eragon said with a fearful tone, but I don't want to discuss it here. People will notice our private conversation soon. We will continue this at home, she said, and cut the connection between them. One more thing to worry about, just when she had decided to live in the moment. A month at a time, when Arya entered the house, she saw Eragon focused on the parchment he was furiously attacking with a pen. He was sitting on the couch, with the parchment resting on a thick book on his lap, the pipe hanging from his lips that she suspected had its fire extinct for a long time. We missed you at dinner, she said. Eragon kept writing and only threw her a glance. A new poem? Or a story? She asked as she unstrapped Tamerlane and let it rest on the desk in the study. Eragon mumbled without picking up the pipe. Neither. Arya leaned on the fireplace and crossed her arms on her chest. Won't you tell me what it is? A letter, he mumbled again. She narrowed her eyes to his negligence in giving her attention. A letter to. Finally, he grabbed the pipe and looked at her. That's what I needed to tell you. I'm afraid you won't like it. Her eyes were already two annoyed slits, but her forehead managed to increase her display of dissatisfaction. Why not? He took a drag before answering. The fire wasn't extinct after all. I considered keeping it a secret from you, but now it's not the time for hiding information from each other. She took a deep breath and went to sit by his side. Are you being reckless and impulsive again? He laughed. How would I know? I never think I'm being reckless and impulsive when I'm doing it. You would know if you told me. His eyes turned warm and kind. He nodded and took a deep breath to prepare himself to say it. My queen, I made a side plan in case tracking Dewson's business partner didn't work. What side plan? I will send a letter to Deathada providing false information. If the information spreads, we will know he is the traitor. If he comes to you with concerns about it, you will know he is trustworthy. I fear you may have the enemy closer than you think. Arya sighed and diverted her eyes from his. Otherwise, she would melt under his stare, and that was something she didn't need at the moment. She was feeling annoyed with his intrusion. He didn't have the right to run an investigation around her reign, especially when she was accused of being submissive to his command. Which she wasn't, but people would often say what they didn't know. Fine. She was feeling the anger escape through her feral words. I won't tell you the many reasons why it's a stupid plan and how much it is disrespectful, because I'm sure that your selfish mind could already figure this out, she said in a harsh voice and stood up to go to bed. He didn't try to stop her, but she did anyway, because she remembered something she wanted to ask him. Arya turned to speak, but saw his saddened face. She hurt him again by calling him selfish. Brilliant. Swallowing a painful lump, she found her voice. Do you mind if I use the Eyrie to confer with Deathada tomorrow morning? I don't want him to see this place through the mirror. Eragon nodded and looked to the parchment, returning to his writings. You don't have to ask, he said low. She felt divided. On one hand, he was the one crossing her political boundaries. On the other hand, Arya hated to leave such a strained situation between them. She hated that things were so difficult with him. Should she enclose the distance and apologize, even if she thought he was the one to blame? Her pride was taking several hits that day. Arya didn't have time to dwell on it because Eragon raised his head again with a puzzled expression. Why don't you want him to see this place? I thought you were friends. It sounded to her more as an accusation than a legitimate doubt. She just didn't know what she was being accused of. We are, but not enough to let him see the house you built for me. Not when that information could be used somehow. Strange friendship that you two have. What are you saying? I just thought you wouldn't mind that your friends knew about us. But now you show that you mind indeed. It confuses me, that's all. Arya was the one confused. He knew about the impediments for their relationship. He knew the council wouldn't approve and would try to either dethrone her or work to stop her from flying east. And that was the best scenario. The worst he didn't know about. If he knew, he wouldn't be there living with her. He wouldn't have built the house. He wouldn't have even tried to be her mate. Arya was sure that if Eragon knew that their proximity was risking her life, he would want to end it all. If he knew that he was one of the main reasons that a coup was being orchestrated against her, he would never forgive himself. And her for keeping such a big secret. Thinking again, she didn't have the right to judge his malicious letter. I mind because if the council knows about us, they would try to stop me from coming here. Is that what you want? Eragon clenched his jaw and shook his head, looking away through the window. He lost his stare at the darkened garden outside. Arya sat by his side again. Eragon, she called, and he looked at her. It makes me feel powerless when you interfere with my reign or my personal matters. I feel like I don't have a choice. Do you understand that? It took him a while, but he nodded. I do. But Arya, I would do anything. Anything to keep you safe. I know it's selfish of me, that you don't need me. But I need you. I need you alive, even if it costs our relationship. He was doing it all for her, she then realized. Arya lifted her hand to touch the hair on the back of his head in the way they liked so much. I don't need you. Is that what you think? His eyes went dark as his thick brows furrowed in a grimace. What is it? She asked. Eragon didn't answer, and she saw a bit of red tinging his cheeks. You can tell me, she encouraged him. What do you say we keep the secrets at a minimum as you mentioned before? He agreed, and said, still a little hesitant. I thought you may be ashamed of me. By the way you wished to hide me from Deathada, and from everybody else. Embarrassed that I'm your mate, Arya widened her eyes. She didn't know if she should find his words funny or worrisome. Why would she ever be embarrassed of having him as her mate? It was absurd. Like a cold steel piercing her brain, the memory of Fernan pointing at her prejudices against Eragon took over her mind. Was it possible that he thought about that as well? She twirled his curls around her fingers with tenderness. Why would I be embarrassed of you? He shrugged and looked away. You had listed the many reasons why I couldn't be with you in the past. They must be inside your head somewhere. Arya had never considered that he would look back at their past once their future was set. It was disheartening for her to feel that her internal questions weren't so internal after all, but offensive to the peace she wished to maintain with him. She retreated her hand, but turned her body to face him. He did the same after placing the book with the parchment and his pipe on the center table. They are in my head, you are right. But they don't represent a barrier between us anymore. They are motives for me to want to keep you and our life together, protected from those who wish to harm us. It's not shame, it's protection. Eragon's eyes darkened again for an instant, but he nodded, and I must trust you will know what to do at the right time. He didn't ask, but affirmed. When to tell and what to tell, she smiled. I hope you do. I said I'm committed to you, didn't I? His face lit up even for a bit. Which makes me think of what you believe commitment means. Are you ridding me of my promise? Arya thought about the conversation she had with Fernan the day before, and his guidance gave her the confidence she needed, even if she dreaded what Avelina had pointed out to her earlier. I am. You may ask whatever you wish from me. If it's within my power, I will do it. Eragon smiled, and she suspected it was because of the discreet tremble in her voice in the end. She certainly was afraid of what he would ask. I believe you have already figured out by now. The painful lump emerged again, and she swallowed it back down. I believe I do, but I need you to say it. I want you to promise that you will come to me in definitive if I fail to prepare Rainier to replace me. I know it may take many years or decades for me to come to this conclusion, but I need to know that you are committed enough to plan our future together. Arya could almost laugh at how synchronized they seemed to be if the situation wasn't so dramatic. She tried to prepare Avelina as an alternative to the possibility of Rainier failing at being right for the position, because she knew Eragon would pressure her to do what she could not even fathom how to do. She hoped his plan would work, for she hated the idea of failing her role as queen, even if it meant she would have a lifetime in the company of the person she treasured the most. Is that all? She asked with pain in her voice. Aye. That's all I need. It's a lot, I hope you know that. Eragon smiled with sadness. I know. You also know it would probably break me. His expression was all sadness, no smiling at that moment. I know, he whispered. But I also know myself. I only need the promise, because when the time comes, I won't be able to hold you to it. Arya was surprised. What good a promise can be without the actual effect it can cause? She did not see what good could come from the words of an empty promise. So why do I have to promise if I won't have to keep it? His hand touched her face gently, and she could feel a slight tremor on it. When he answered, his hoarse voice and the words that came out of his mouth broke her heart. For me to know you really want me for who I am. First, her mouth opened in disbelief. Then her brows creased, and her eyes teared up. It wasn't possible that after all they have been through, he would still doubt her feelings for him. It was not possible. How much would she have to do to make him trust her commitment? How much would she have to do for him to get rid of his insecurities and trust her love? Not do, my dear. Say it, Eragon. She hesitated. Say it, Arya. He needs to hear it. She damned the words that felt stuck in her throat, and her curse passed for binding her to bad memories that left her forever with a bitter taste in her mouth. Just forget it all. Say it, my dear. If Fernan hadn't appeared into her life, she wouldn't be half of the woman she was, the brave woman she wished to be. Of that she was sure. Of course I want you, Eragon. She started and grabbed the hand that was still touching her face. Of course I do, for I love you. I love you, Eragon. She could die right there because life had finally seemed meaningful to her. The look in his eyes was extraordinary. Breathtaking. It was the look of a man that felt loved at last. It was curious to think that hearing it from him was not as powerful as watching his reaction to the words coming out of her mouth. She would do anything to hold on to that look. She would make him feel loved every day of his life if she could. She would do anything, anything. I promise that if you can't find a suitable replacement for your role as head rider, I will leave Elismera and come live with you here, for good. And you can hold me to it. Eragon smiled with tears in his eyes and nodded satisfied. Arya came close to him to kiss his lips that tasted like smoke and salt. She didn't bother as she didn't mind the roughness of his skin. She loved all of him and would do anything for him. So, you're not ashamed of me? He asked in her lips with humor. She rolled her eyes and backed away. She was amused by his jest when they were having a life-changing moment. How could I? You are the most celebrated man in the world. A true legend. How lucky am I to have you as my mate, she said dramatically. He laughed at her playful banter. Understood. You don't feel ashamed, I get it. She smiled and kissed him again. And again he spoke. Was he doing that to annoy her? So, we are keeping the secret, right? I just want to be sure. Arya grabbed both sides of his face and looked deep in his eyes. Yes, Eragon. At least for now, all right. Now let me kiss you, please. He let her, but only for a second because he backed away again to her annoyance and said, I love you too, just in case it wasn't clear before. This time she locked the hold behind his neck and answered with their foreheads leaning against each other. It was clear, my love. It has always been.